even if this does, the economy kills us and we can't keep going, people just disagree, whatever it is, like it doesn't work out. It's like, are we pushing the industry in a good direction? And I feel like in so many ways, like we are trying to help the newer creator start doing this, become the middle class creator, whatever it is, to help grow to the biggest creator, whatever it is, like understand that and help that as much as we can. Obviously, we can't help absolutely everybody. We can't, like we're limited in ourselves. I'm still running my stuff, and what it is. But to me, it is worth the journey. And even if I push it in the right direction, it's something I'd like to be part of and like to at least try and say that I put everything that I could in terms of obviously all the money we've invested into it and the years, the months of putting the playbook together, the content, the research, looking at other creators, talking to other creators. Like, I definitely feel like I've put a really good foot forward as our whole team has.
Hi, I'm Jacob Wolf, CEO and founder of Overcome. Welcome to Visionaries, our new podcast where twice a week we bring on some of the most high-profile and successful people from the gaming industry to talk about their careers and how our industry is evolving. Today, we're welcoming on Stephen Ellis, known as Snoopeh, a former professional League of Legends player who has transitioned into working in the content creation space behind the scenes, including time at Facebook and more now recently Pipeline. We're also welcoming on StoneMountain 64, the high-profile creator who, unlike many of his peers, has found success on Facebook rather than Twitch or elsewhere. In 2019, the two of them together co-founded Pipeline, an education platform helping people get their start at becoming content creators. 3 years later, they've learned a lot about how gaming is changing and how their business has had to adapt. So without further ado, welcome Stephen and Stone to Visionaries. Welcome everyone to episode 5 of Visionaries. We are joined today by StoneMountain 64 and Stephen Ellis, once upon a time known as Snoopeh. I think you don't use that nearly as frequently, other than it being your Twitter tag, but I don't see you reference as that anymore.
It is weird though when you're known as that for 5 years and then you switch. It's like, it's weird because still a lot of people know me as it, and then a lot of new people don't.
The reason I wanted these guys on is I think that of the founders that I know in the gaming space, not only are they doing interesting work, but I think they have a really different perspective on things as well, because they come from two very different backgrounds, but actually are maybe more similar than you think. So for those unfamiliar, Steven is a former professional League of Legends player, and then worked at Facebook on the gaming side of things. And Stone is a creator, and is also on producing content on Facebook on quite a regular cadence as well. And I think that for those perspectives now, running a company together is a lot different than I think a lot of founder sets who are kind of more similar from the background. I think those two things are a little different. So why don't we start there? How did you guys meet each other and then come up with the idea to start Pipeline, and what you have today?
Thanks for having us on. First of all, man, really appreciate it. To your point, I've been creating content. I started back in 2011, so I've been doing it for a little over 10 years. I started initially on YouTube. I actually was streaming on Twitch and partnered there for 2 years before I ended up canceling that. I was then streaming over on YouTube and Twitch and Facebook and Mixer all at the same time. Of course, Mixer not around. I really never got too much traction off that in the first place, but I ended up just having like a Patreon where I was separately managing supports there rather than taking the rev split, yada, yada, yada. Long story short, ultimately, I was finding a lot of traction on Facebook. So I was like, you know what, let's give this thing a go. And that was actually, I had met Steven around that time. I had been uploading videos to Facebook, and I had seen like how viral they went, similar to like on Instagram or now what you see like on TikTok, where people will even tag friends and be like, hey, come check this video out. This is hilarious. Look at this guy yelling or whatever, where I had never experienced that on YouTube. And I was like, holy crap, dude, like this stuff can go insanely viral. So then Steven actually came and when was working at Facebook at the time, came to talk to a whole bunch of creators about streaming on Facebook, which they were trying to launch. And I was like, bro, how do I get in on this? How do I try this out? Ended up doing really good. Started doing some short streams, and so that was ultimately how we met. And then a couple months after I'd been streaming on the platform for a while, I got partnered with Facebook and have continued on since then, basically.
I've got a little more context about when we met, but just a little bit background on myself for those who are not familiar. As Jacob said, I was a professional League of Legends player. Spent 5 years of my early 20s devoted to being the best at League of Legends. We did pretty well. It was absolutely incredible. Traveling, competing around the world at the early days of Riot Esports. Streamed a bunch on Twitch throughout those years as well. That's where I met Jacob. He was covering a lot of our games and matches and all the things that teams were doing and not doing. Was a big part of that. And fast forward, I was ready. I was ready for the next chapter. I spent 5 years competing, but I was ready for the next chapter, and that's when I got the opportunity to work at Facebook. And for me, it was a chance to go behind the scenes rather than being in front of the scenes, like being a face, and rather shape the business from the back end. And when I was at Facebook, we started building out gaming video. And frankly, I was speaking in a room in front of 300 creators, telling them like, hey, we're building this thing, Facebook gaming, and it's going to be really cool. You can't go live in anything other than 480p. There's no way to monetize yet, but like, hey, come check this out. And like most of the people in that room did not care. Like out of 300 people. And I was like, it's going to be cool. Like, I promise, we're working on a lot of stuff for a lot of money. One person in that room, well, there's a couple, but like Stone was definitely the most eager. And he was the most excited to see what we're building and the potential of the platform. This is way back in 2016. We're talking 6 years ago.
And to be fair, I think a lot of the other creators' perspectives were sound in terms of like, hey, I'm uploading this video to YouTube and making a lot of money off it, because there's all like career YouTubers and streamers and everything that was there. So it's like, okay, I'm going to upload to this other platform where I can't get any ad split. I can't get any monetization. Like, why would I do any? It's like, I get the perspective.
And it's totally legit, right? Like, we had no way to make money. The quality wasn't great back then, but Stone had a lot of videos going viral, as he said, and saw the potential of what could happen if, there started being more investments on it. And that's where our relationship started back in 2016. And a lot of the products and like the platform today, we co-developed and co-partnered on it, rolling out monetization around the world, rolling out, content moderation, different programs. A lot of that was, 2.5 years being in the trenches, giving us feedback, and our relationship of working together started way back in 2016.
So I want to ask a little bit about, because both of you involved, Stone actively now still a creator on Facebook, and Steven a former Facebook employee. One thing that I remember reading about when Mixer shut down and all the creators moved off the platform, obviously what was highly publicized was that Ninja and Shroud were done, right? Like the platform was letting go of its big guys. But I remember reading a lot at the time about creators who were kind of in that middle section, right? Because they had, either left Twitch or maybe they started from nothing on Mixer, right? That they had built this audience that actually was like fairly reliable for them. And so the people who were kind of hurt were these people that were these middle income type streamers, not the top 1% of the platform. I think that when I see Facebook streaming, especially as it comes to games today, a lot of the people that I find successful are those types of people now, even on that platform. And I think that we see even broadly as well, like TikTok is diving into the live creation space, and I don't think they've figured out gaming quite yet because of the aspect ratio and a few other things. It makes it a weird experience. But I want to ask you guys about the opportunity you see in streaming past the headlines on other platforms other than Twitch, past the headlines of, they're writing a big giant check to YouTube's writing a giant check to this creator or whatever it may be. The opportunity you see for those people that may be on the come up and can find a unique audience on these other platforms.
Yeah, it's been interesting. And even to your point, like from some of those guys on Mixer, a lot of them, I think the majority of them went back to Twitch after Mixer closed, but there was also some that did make the transition over to Facebook as well. I mean, top of my mind, one of the guys that I met was Spartacus. He was actually a guy that I had played with back on the day with Jared FPS over on Mixer back in the day. And they showed me like some Easter eggs, and we ended up playing together, and he ended up making the move over to Facebook. And now he averages like 1,500, 2,000 concurrents over on there. He's absolutely exploded from starting at nothing, switching over to Facebook. And that's what I've seen too from like Audio Freak, Fab. I mean, there's Jadavise is blown up on. He used a lot of TikTok as well, but there's been a lot of creators that have really become much bigger just by only ever even streaming on Facebook. And I feel like there's going to be a lot of things happening like that on YouTube as well. I mean, we had a ton of people obviously blow up from streaming on YouTube over all of these years to a certain degree. Like they came out with YouTube gaming, then it went away. But like typical gamer obviously blew up to extraordinary levels. There's been a lot of guys that have just natively only, obviously a lot of that's through video format as well on YouTube too. But I do think there's a lot of interesting things to your point too, even TikTok. Like there's still a lot of people that are monetizing very well in terms of just receiving the gifts, even if the ad revenue and the other things aren't there. But a lot of that is supplemented by the platforms too, in terms of the discovery that they're giving out whenever they're testing things. We've seen this on all of these algorithmic based platforms where whenever there's something new or whatever, they push that more heavily, gives people exposure, or it's through, Facebook has these programs with 100% creator split for creators on supporters or bonuses for stars and things like that. But yeah, I guess in terms of like I see a lot more people finding success through the algorithm and through discovery on a lot of these platforms and building audiences through that in terms of the tail end of the creators, the newer creators that are coming on, typically more so than going and trying to fight the mainstream Twitch category, trying to build viewers through that.
Yeah, I would echo that. I mean, Jacob, you've been around since the beginning of these live platforms, right? Like, I think it was, I don't know if you were on Own3D, but I used to stream on Own3D before, and that was the predecessor to Twitch. And a lot of the Europeans moved over to Twitch. I mean, the live model historically isn't been that great, right? It's very much like app store discovery. You get the top 10, and like that's it, right? And you got to keep scrolling down to find anyone else, and no one's going to do that. I think the big innovation that's happened in content already came from YouTube. YouTube has been working on this for a long, long time with VOD, is starting to drive more algorithmic discovery, as Stone was saying. And that opportunity is way bigger now than it ever has been. Before, like you had to, like, I got popular because I was really good at League of Legends, right? And like League of Legends was pumping a ton of money behind marketing, like esports, and like I was, competing on stages. I had it much easier on Twitch back in the day than a creator who's just starting out on Twitch. And if that's the only way they're trying to get discovered is on Twitch, your chances are really low because you're just at the bottom of a deep pool of about 8 million people every single month. And that's where I think platforms like TikTok, platforms like Shorts, using VOD on YouTube, VOD on Facebook, using Reels or here on Twitter, like using different other discovery like elements to then funnel back to your live is way more viable and is an opportunity that we never really had back in the day. It was, no one was really thinking that way of like, hey, I should funnel my audience from one place to the other. Maybe folks that were doing blogs or something, like they were thinking that way, right? Like SEO and blogs. But in terms of the content game and the live content game, no one was thinking about how do I funnel my audience from here to here. And that's the thing that's really changed. And there's just more places to do that now, more platforms to do that now than there ever has been.
One thing that I find interesting, and Stone, I want your perspective on this because you are a successful creator to this day. And I think one thing that shifted from the era when I used to watch Steven's streams back in the Evil Geniuses house in 2015, there were people that were the top 1% of Twitch back then were just very skilled players. It wasn't a ton of entertainment, entertainment value. It was just like I was a nerd who loved League and therefore watched the best players in the world play this game. And there were even some people who straight up like no cam, no microphone, just watch, like listen to some copyright free music and watch me play League and kick some ass. And like it was a very base level. I feel like we've shifted a lot in about 7 years where now it's like not only do you have to be pretty good at a game or like you still a little bit judged on your skill, you actually also have to be entertaining in some sort of way. But I think that with the exception of some people like Dr. Disrespect, who's truly a full character, the a lot of the people that are personalities and that have that personality and show it outwardly as entertainers are usually amplified versions of themselves. This is something that you hear like Stephen A. Smith talk about, and sort of, hear him talk about First Take and how he's loud and rambunctious. Like, that's just him, but a little bit on steroids, just amping himself up. How do you find, and how did you find, Stone, the within yourself, how to be an entertainer, and then kind of did you try to just clock that up, basically?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I feel like there's so much insight, even in what you just asked, that we could unpack there. Um, and to be fair, I think there is still a lot of that aspect where, there's a lot of people that just want to watch whoever the incredible player is. That's one of the reasons, like, I like to watch Shroud. I'll just put his stream on, watch him dominate whatever the hell he's playing, listen to and like lately, he doesn't read too much of the chat or whatever it is, but he's still talking and bringing it together. But to your point, like, there is definitely more of an element of the entertainment, because even the players that are at the highest level of what they're doing now have the competition of other people that are doing pretty much just as good, maybe even better in some degrees, maybe not. I don't know, maybe a little bit worse, but they're a lot more entertaining in how they perform it. And then and then it's like, all right, well, I'm going to go watch this other guy who's a little bit more entertaining, throws in some more jokes, has some more humor, has better guests on, plays with different or whatever, and then that's the draw or the appeal. So to your question then, and how, like, for me, that developed over all of this time, it 100% was a development. This is what I try and tell people too, is like, if you go back and look at my video when I said, hey, thanks for 100 subscribers, this is crazy, I couldn't even ever imagine having 100 subscribers or whatever, with my long hair in my dorm room back at school. It was like, I'm a completely different content creator from what I was then. And I think there's a certain aspect where you do change over a decade. I have a kid now, I have a family. Like, there's a certain aspect of that, but it was also a lot of me developing my own skill, to where I was at one point really trying to become a much better player at the actual games I was playing. But from what I found, like, that development for me was like looking at the content that I was consuming from other people, because I had even been watching content for years before this. I was following XJaws, White Boy 7th Street, T Martin, Woody's Gamer Tag, and being like, holy dude, I couldn't even imagine, like, that was one of my old tweets. I couldn't even imagine having 100,000 subscribers. And a lot of that is like looking at some of these other creators, what they're doing, and then kind of putting those pieces together. So I've got a lot of examples of this, but even my And We're Live series was the first one that I ever really got some traction on, where I went into these random Call of Duty lobbies, and I would cast them like I was a professional, football player, and cast them and try and make it more of a professional take. There's people that were doing it and being a little bit more crude and stuff with their humor, but I was trying to keep it a little bit. I would still teabag people, but like, it was still really like, I tried to bring the humor out for it, but it was like getting reactions. And so that developed into like my YOLO series, where I'd go in as a commanding officer. I saw other series though, like my World's Best Clip of the Week show was something where I saw this old show that was called Cute Win Fail. And it was 3 clips. That was like a cute cat and somebody falling off a chair or whatever. And the audience would vote which was the best. And so I said, well, what if and it was growing, it was doing really good. It was like this trending thing. I was like, what if I did that for gaming? And so I created that series for World's Best Clip of the Week. And it's developed over time. It's turned into top plays. I've done like 600 episodes of that at this point, or something insane. It's been, 8 years or whatever it's been. But like, a lot of that was, for me, it was discovering, like, how do I find those ways of trying to continue to stand out? Because even back then, like, it's similar to how it is now. Obviously, there's more competition now. It's even easier to get into it, but there's also more viewers than ever as well. So it's like, it's very much still feels similar to the ways that I differentiated back then and have continued to do so. It's the only reason that I've kept everything to a stable enough point where I'm still doing this full time, doing better than I ever have, year over year with it. And in very different mechanisms over all the years too, to the point, like, I was streaming on Twitch for 2 years, and, I got up to like 100 subscribers, I think, on that. I think this was pre Twitch Prime. And so I was like, I was doing pretty good, but I still was like, I'm losing 50% of my revenue funneling everybody over here. And so it was like, well, it'd be a lot more different if I streamed on all the platforms, if I had a Patreon, figured out a way. And so, like, that developed into a whole arc as well. And that became something again that's like, oh, this guy's doing something different. What the heck is he doing? This is really weird. And some people hate you for that. Some people are like, no, I'm never going over, I get that a lot. I'm never going over to Facebook. I'm just not going to download the app ever. And that's cool too. You know, I got 4 YouTube channels that you can watch. I got the Twitter, I got the TikTok, I got other things. And then there's people on each of the platforms. Everybody hates everybody on all the different platforms. So, you know, I like it all. I like to go across it. So it's a little bit more understandable to me, but you know, you can also use that to your advantage in some ways.
I want to actually touch on something you had in that answer, and I
Hmm.
want you guys, as businessmen that now run an education business that try to help people become better creators, help them find their footing. I want to ask you about sort of a psychoanalysis question here. Something you said in that answer was that people refuse to leave Twitch, and I think that's really interesting. I was talking to Atrioc about this some weeks ago, when Ninja and Shroud left Twitch to go to Mixer. People just found other streamers. At first, that was Dr. Disrespect, and then he was banned off the platform, and then it was XQC, and you just saw like the audience ride through to the directory and just move on to someone else. I think that's very rare, to just cut off an entertainer that you feel like you're connected to and that you support their content, because you don't want to type in a different URL. Like, that level of sort of connection to the platform feels very abnormal to me. If you had to psychoanalyze why that is, why do you think Twitch has that vice grip? And do you think it's eroding now a little bit more and more?
I think, Stone, you've got a great, because you did a lot of this migration, so you witnessed it firsthand.
Yeah.
But we thought a lot about this at Facebook. We were in the content acquisition game, similar to Twitch, similar to YouTube, you know, similar to Mixer, and having creators come over the platform. And one of the things, it wasn't unique to Twitch. The same thing was true when, if you were signing a YouTuber and bring them over to Mixer or bring them over to Facebook, the same thing was true. Audiences, by and large, do not migrate to another platform. There continues to be experimentation. The last experimentation we seen was, there was like a click. I don't know how to describe it, but like, you know, like there was Toast and like Valk and like that crew, or not Toast, sorry, Valk and who was the recent
Courage.
signings over? Yeah, Courage, and there was a couple more that YouTube just signed to.
Myths.
But it was like
Sukuno, Lily
yeah.
Pichu,
Sukuno and Lichu. There's like, it's like a
others.
click, right? It's like if you draw like a Venn diagram, like maybe their audiences overlap, right? And then that's like a new strategy where people are trying to like capture audience and bring them over. But by and large, you know, we had hundreds of creators that we had signed over the years. Audience migration was extremely challenging, and actually was a massive lift on the creator themselves to constantly get, hey, I'm over here now. Hey, I'm over here now. Hey, I'm over here now. It didn't just happen on like, hey, here's the announcement, like come over. It was a constant reminder of trying to bring some of their audience over. And what we actually found is they developed a new audience. They created a new audience on Facebook or on Mixer or on YouTube, and their content just resonated with this new group of people that they were getting in front of. And that's what became the norm. And I think that continues to be true. The latest experiments by YouTube, like I don't know how they're going, like how much of that little click of audience like moved over. But that's my belief, is that audiences don't really migrate. And what these apps, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Twitch, they are trying to get you hooked every day on their platform. Like that's they want to serve you content that gets you to spend on average of an hour and a half a day, or more if it's like TikTok, on the platform. Like that's what they're encouraged to do. And they're going to do everything to make that possible rather than just the creator itself. So they're going to try and serve up as much content as they can. And I think these apps are stickier than a particular creator. And that's the behavior that is trained. And I think that's somewhat of a Twitch thing. I think that's somewhat a YouTube thing. I think that'll be the same for TikTok.
Yeah, I think it's very similar as well. I feel like a lot of people get locked into the idea that a lot of people follow people for the specific creator, and while I do think a lot of that is true, I think there's a lot more that just watch for whatever they want to watch at that time. And what I mean by that is, like, I've seen this so much even on YouTube from all of these different games that I've played. Like, there's a lot of people that watched me back in the day. Like, I got millions of views for some of my old Call of Duty content. A lot of people don't even know about any of that. Like, they never stuck around. There's no like long-term viewer that sticks around for a lot, especially at a smaller creator standpoint. Like, I feel like this is just, but even as you said, you know, in a larger sense of like Ninja or whatever, he has some people that come over to Mixer, or Shroud has some people come, like, and some like thousands of people. That's a lot. But relative to now, he's streaming Valorant and he'll get like 30, 40,000 concurrents on what he's doing there, like just every day, and he's not even reading the chat. He's just playing the game, right? I think a lot of that is just the context of the person is more inclined to go to the specific platform of what that is and consume whatever's there and just go on to the next person that's there. Like they are part of that Twitch community more so, like greater than even being there for an individual creator. Now there are a lot of people that are there for an individual creator and just want to see, what's the latest Saikuno stream or whatever. Like I just want to follow this one person. But typically it is a bigger audience. And exactly to Snoop's point is like or Steven's point is like if you bring a bunch of people over and you have that entire community of people that they would watch, I think there's a much higher probability of people like continuing on with that group of people for it. And it's the same exact thing that I've seen through my own audiences. And even to the sake of like what I mentioned earlier, trying to drive people over to Twitch in the past is like, I'm spending a whole bunch of effort, time, and energy into this to also lose half of what I was doing, with a 50% split. And it's like, this and it's just not very beneficial. I'm not seeing a lot of people come over from it. There is a big benefit in that though, in that if you do bring some people over and you can, kickstart it, get some people watching, that's how you get to the top of a category, especially if it's a miscellaneous one or whatever. We see this, even people will embed streams on websites and get tons of viewership. And it's like, how do these people have so many viewers on it? Like that's the entire meta on Twitch because there's no algorithm to, there's a recommended or whatever, but how effective is it versus some other ones? Uh, that's much more powerful thing, but it's like, okay, well, what if you did that elsewhere? And to the point when I started on Facebook is like, when I was posting this content, it's not people on YouTube sending links over to their friend and being like text messaging them or whatever. It is directly on the platform. People are tagging each other. And like, I'm seeing like, maybe a million view on Facebook. Like I got like a 5 or 10 million view, or excuse me, on YouTube. I saw like a 5-10 million view video on Facebook. And I'm like, holy crap. Like if this can get shared, this is outside of like an algorithm or whatever. Like this is this guy sending it to 4 other people that they're just connected with. And it's like, that's way more powerful to where it was like this. It was a completely new audience that I developed on YouTube. And that's what's become more of the struggle really is like, how do I manage a YouTube audience and a Facebook audience and a TikTok audience likes different things and Instagram likes different things. Like everybody likes it. Twitter likes different things. I think there is more like crossover, especially with like how Twitch was built. There's a lot more people that are on TikTok there's a lot more people that are on Twitch that are also on Twitter. I feel like there's a big crossover in terms of that where people have just gotten to that rhythm because Twitch, you can really only do your stream. You can't continue the conversation. I feel like a lot of that was just lost opportunity by Twitch where people continue the conversation on Twitter, but then there's like good synergy there. And we see that between certain platforms for things. But yeah, that's why I do think there is a divide. And that's,
I think one thing I want to add is just to ground it in the numbers, because I was the one that convinced Stone eventually to come over from YouTube. I think I can't remember, you were like maybe at 1 million subscribers on YouTube. This is back in 20, maybe a bit more than that at that point. And I think you did like a couple of 100,000 or something on Facebook and had a couple of videos go viral. And when you moved over, like you were trying out Twitch at the time, you said you got a couple of 100 CCV, even though you had like almost 1 million subs on YouTube, getting like 100 CCV on Twitch, came over to Facebook. And then I think within a couple of years, you went from a couple 100,000 followers to like 2 million plus followers, and your CCV was 10x what you got on Twitch.
Oh yeah,
and that wasn't YouTube. That was a new audience on Facebook.
Yeah, it surpassed it, and that's what I actually noticed, that more people found my YouTube through Facebook. Like they would find my Facebook, and then they would go subscribe on YouTube, versus the other direction of YouTube over to Facebook. Although there was some, like that's what helped to get like some traction or known or whatever it was. But yeah, there was a lot of that. It was also, I was multi-streaming out to all of them, which was a lot to manage in general. But like, I'd pull a 1,000 concurrent on YouTube, 1,000 on YouTube, on Facebook, but it was still like 50, 100 maybe on Twitch for whatever it was. But yeah, it was very much a different audience off of it.
So let's ask the $1 million question here that you guys have spent the past several years of your life trying to figure out. How do you become a popular creator in 2022?
That's a deep question. There's a lot that kind of goes into it, to where I don't know if I could give you in a nutshell everything that kind of goes into it, but I think just at the highest level, if you wanted to, what I typically boil it down to is like, it is your content itself, which has a whole bunch of branches within it. and the consistency that you do it at. I think there is also a certain level of like you do need to have like a certain level of time or money or way to invest into this. Like you have to have a certain enough upload speed to even get a video up or do whatever at a consistent basis. But really, those are the two big things: is like the content and your consistency of doing that. Doesn't necessarily. And the thing is, like especially with all the people that you see blowing up now, like I've seen so many people just in these last couple of years, obviously over the last decade, tons of people blow up off of a whole bunch of different things. People that started way later than me that have gotten way bigger than me in terms of content. But so that's where there's a range in those different categories, but it is like very much differentiating content. And then that consistency is like you've got to continue to upload whatever it is, whether that's a weekly super high quality thing or 3 times a day about whatever super trendy thing that you are the absolute like fastest to respond on whatever and be the head of the content for. um People subscribe or follow or build momentum off of things because it's the next thing you're doing, right? And I think a lot of people get caught, and that's where I got caught as well. Is like, oh, I did this crazy thing, like I got all of these views. How come all my numbers are now plummeting to the ground? And I feel terrible about this. And like, oh, and then I have another up, and then it's all plummeting back down. And it's like there's cycles to it as well. But like that's what I mean, as boiled down as I could possibly get it. That's where I see people continuing to come out of nowhere. It's like it is the content and them continuing to do what they are doing.
Yeah, the one thing I'd add, and we spent a lot of time thinking about this and talking about this, and I think we've interviewed, I don't know, over like a couple of hundred creators now, and we've got thousands in our community that are on this journey. The idea that you could become like you hear this, you hear us talking right now, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna go start the YouTube channel, and I'm gonna blow up in 2022. That is just so unrealistic. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's just very unrealistic, and it will take a long time. And like you need to be willing to, as Stone said, like be consistent and stick to this for time. You can learn things like certain things about like how to edit video and how to like do like click through, think about click through rate and thumbnails and storytelling. And there's certain hard skills that you can learn. But thinking, oh, I can do this for a month and like I should expect to blow up, like that is just silly. Or even like a couple of months and like, oh, I should blow up. It's really that this is a journey that you're going to go on, and most people that have been on this journey have been doing it for a couple of years or even longer. Like Stone, I mean, you're about to have grandkids now, right? Like you, I mean,
Not quite. Not quite.
I'm just kidding. He's been in the game for the last decade, right? And it just goes to show that like it doesn't happen overnight. There's very few people. We've seen a bunch of folks on TikTok that have blown up, but even then, like blowing up on TikTok's one thing, like turning that into a sustainable, growing business is another, right? Like where a lot of TikTok creators are facing that challenge of kind of building sustainable channels. So I think that's just like change your point of view on like, hey, I'm going to run at this, and I'm really passionate about it. I'm going to do this for a couple of years. Because if you're just like, oh, a couple of months, it's going to be really hard to make it happen in a couple of months, or to get enough traction that you're going to be like, oh, I can double down on this.
And there are, I mean, like there's opportunities that can come up from that, right? And there's also people who have been building an expertise in something like woodworking or whatever it is, and then they can finally have that opportunity to show that. Like that's where, like, especially when you're like, we have talked to so many creators and we've seen so much of this over so many different niches that you don't even think would have existed, and then it's like, oh, of course that exists, you know. Of course there's like I found this lawyer who's a woodworker, and like his channel exploded because he managed to bring that into the Amber Heard trial and like talk about his perspective there, and grew a whole audience off of that and get hundreds of thousands of subscribers, right? Like that's where looking for the opportunity over a long time can help. But yeah, I mean it's a tricky thing because there is so much competition out there, and it seems like everything is taken, but then if you can find those right things, and that's what I even felt like everything was taken when I was starting out. Like I was already watching all the content that I wanted to see. You know, they wanted to close the copyright or whatever it was back in like the 70s or 80s or whatever it was. They're like, oh, everything's been invented. There's no need for this anymore. But people keep on coming up with new innovative things. But that's where like the differentiation is. It's like, how do you come up with that different thing to where and that's where it is. Like, if you can build an audience of, and this is what my dad even told me when I was first starting out, is like, if you can have like 1,000 people that are really dedicated, like believe in you, believe in your content, whatever it is. Like, let's say that's even $1 a month that they're willing to commit to you or watch enough content on or whatever, then that could be something that could sustain you. It could let you take it to another level, continue to invest, take it to, maybe you could try and get to 5,000. It's not an easy thing to do, but it's a lot more reasonable than thinking about like, hey, how do I get 5 million subscribers in 2022 and make this like a, become a giant super national, international superstar on YouTube. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I want to flip that on you a little bit, Jacob, because I think your industry, whether it's reporting, is probably going through a similar shift in the sense of like, can you grow your own audience that you own rather than going through these middle like gatekeepers, right? I think in the past
Sure.
it used to be these middlemen you would go through.
Mhm.
Now you're able to go direct to audience, and I think that's true whether it's Twitch, YouTube, or not. Like, you had $5 a month from enough people, that's enough to make a living. It's not about getting all this clout or like having millions of followers. And I think you've got a very good firsthand experience of this, where you're kind of going through that same process right now of building your own company. Like, what's it for you?
I would say, and this actually kind of teased me in what I wanted to follow up and talk to you guys about and some of what you're doing with Pipeline. But I would say that I think the biggest hurdle is monetizing this young audience. I always say, like, a lot of the people that consume gaming content right now, and sort of other industries, gaming adjacent, to creator industry, whatever it may be, a lot of those people are still really young, right? Like the ability to spend on other things in their lives is not there, because they probably don't even have income in some cases, because they're in the 14 to like 22, 23, right? Like high school to college. And so income is not particularly easy to come by for a lot of the people that I think consume the content. And I think also, not to kind of punch down at my own generation as a Zoomer, but I also think my entire generation is very used to getting everything for free. And I think that is a really hard hurdle to clear. We have been very spoiled by what the internet has given us our entire livelihoods. And so it's tough. I think that the journalism industry, like any other industry, is very top heavy, in the sense that the 1% do really, really well. And then there's really not a lot of people in the middle. It's just a lot of people kind of struggling to make it by and make a living wage wherever they may be. And there's not an easy path there, right? I was very benefited that I worked at a massive company for 5 years that let me grow in that company enough to feel like I could take a leap, and go independent eventually and do this. But as someone who writes a Substack newsletter that's got several thousand free subscribers, like it is tough to kind of build up that paid audience as well. And now running a production company, a lot of that work is white label. That's what pays the bills. Other companies, cutting us checks to do that kind of stuff. So I want to talk about that in the context of Pipeline, because what you guys are doing, I think, is a really important and interesting concept. And I've been following it since you all launched it 3 years ago. How has it changed? And I guess for the people maybe listening to this on platforms that aren't familiar with either of you or the company, can you first describe sort of high level what it is, and then talk about how it's developed over the past 3 years?
Think of Pipeline as an online school and community for content creators. Like, that's in a nutshell, think of it like that. The reason it came to be is, I was working closely with Stone back in 2016, and he was creating a shit ton of content all the time. And I was at Facebook, and we would constantly, both of us, get asked questions of, hey, can you help me figure out this? Can you help me figure out that? This is the first time I've encountered this. Can you help me think through it, or whatever? And like, the amount of times that would happen in a single week was ridiculous. Like, to the point where we could not even.
You got any tips for streaming or any advice as a creator? As every creator seems to get when they're live as well. It's like, how'd you do it? Who are you?
Yeah, and I was managing roughly about 50 creators when I was at Facebook in my initial role, and same questions all the time about how do I navigate this? Like, what do you think about that? And when you go to the point where people are not even getting a rep, they're not even getting a manager or an agent, it gets way worse. Like, way worse. Like, the people that'll show up in David's videos or David's stream and going, hey, or Stone, sorry, show up in his stream and go, hey, can you help me figure this out? Like, that person is getting so little support from anyone in this industry. And we launched the Twitch affiliate. Everyone will know what Twitch affiliate is. Less people will know what Facebook Level Up is. It's basically the exact same thing. It's a version of their kind of entry program. I worked on that and launched that at Facebook. And frankly, it was really hard for us to help people that were much earlier in their journey. And the industry does not have a great incentive to help any of them because there's no financial motive, right? Those people are not necessarily generating as much watch hours. So like, content that's being consumed on the platform. So the platform is not that incentivized to help. And then the industry, the agents and the managers are not that incentivized to help those people either, because if I represent 10 people with a small audience, I'm not making enough money to fit on the table. So they're just not going to get help. And that was the kind of early formation of why we started Pipeline. Was there has to be a way where we can build something that's bigger than me, bigger than David, that would help these people that are not getting any support from the industry today.
At the beginning of their journey too, right? Where it's like, when I first started out, after a long time, a lot of YouTube videos and just like trying to figure out what the hell is even going on, I got into like machinima, which turned into, a nightmare down the road. But like, I managed to meet a couple other people that are around my size. And like, there was some benefits, even though I lost a lot of money off or whatever, like there was some benefits there. And it was like, okay, well, what would have been great when I had initially started out? And so that's where it's like, being able to learn things and have a community where you can meet other people, do a competition with them, chat on a weekly basis and mentorship sessions, talking with experienced people that have been doing this for a couple of years. Like, how cool would have that been if Machinima even had set that up for us, where I could have talked with like Syndicate and he could have told us a little bit about what he was doing or like given us any information. And there's definitely things that are out there that are, great, like YouTube channels or podcasts or things like that. That's one of the reasons we created the Becoming a Creator podcast as well, is just to like tighten that down into just a quick nutshell, talking with these creators of, how they got to some of that and provide some of this information. But that was very much the genesis of it and what the entire, premise is, I guess.
Yeah, I think today, like if you go, like, I want to learn to become a creator, where do you go? Like, where do you go, Jacob?
Yeah, there's not an easy resource. I experienced this a lot at the beginning of my journalism career. Like, if you don't go to journalism school, and my family didn't have means, so I didn't. Like, if you don't go to journalism school, then you just start writing and just hope for the best. And it's like you fail so hard publicly, and I think that's really hard for a lot of people. I had that experience. I got very very, very popular as a writer in a very short amount of time, from never published to 16 months later being an ESPN employee. That was really quick, and I failed out in the open a lot. And I think it's tough because I think there's a parallel there for creators too. You just have to fail in the open and hope people forgive you, and if it's bad, or hope people forget or like understand and empathize that with you didn't know what the hell you were doing when you started, and now you're a better person or whatever it may be. Obviously there's a line there from a moral and ethical perspective, but I think it's tough as a creator. There's not an easy answer to that. So I understand the product market fit. I think most people do.
Yeah, it's one of the things you touched on early, is that you got to get over, like, most people get in their own way. That's the biggest issue, is most people overthink it. They try and perfect something, like they won't put out a video because it's got to be like XYZ, and you just got to get out of your own way, and you got to get that engine going. I think Mr. Beast had a great quote about it once. He shared, if you're looking to get started in YouTube, you'll make 100 videos.
Yeah.
Come back to me when you made 100 videos. And that was his like perspective on it, was like, from the act of creating those 100 videos, you will learn a lot of valuable lessons that will inform what you should do next. It's very simplified, right? There's a lot of context and things that he could add to that. But when he's talking to 100 million or a billion people, like, that's what he's just trying to get across, that you got to go through the process. You got to learn and get uncomfortable and be willing to do that and put yourself out there. And that's a scary thing for 90% of people.
Taking a quick break from this episode to have a word from our sponsors. The journey of my career has been pretty fast-paced. I started writing at 17, and within 16 months, I went from having never written a published article to landing a job at ESPN as their youngest talent hire ever. With that fast-paced career, I've often found myself struggling with imposter syndrome and with work-related anxiety. But over the past few years, seeing a therapist really helped me guide my way. And if you think you may be feeling depressed, stressed, anxious, and overwhelmed, then today's sponsor, BetterHelp, is here to help you. BetterHelp offers licensed therapists who are trained to listen and help you. Talk to your therapist in a private online environment whenever's convenient for you. And if you're like me, where it seems there's never enough time in the day, you understand how important that convenience is. There's a broad range of expertise in BetterHelp's 20,000 plus therapist network that gives you access to help that may not be available in your area. Finding a therapist can be hard, but BetterHelp simplifies that experience. You start by filling out a questionnaire to assess your specific needs, and within 48 hours, BetterHelp will match you with a therapist. From there, it's easy. Schedule video and phone sessions, message your therapist as much as you want, whenever you need to, and everything you share is completely confidential. You can request a new therapist at no additional charge anytime. I've been seeing my therapist Diane for 4 years now, and when we reflect back on the progress I've made in my life for the better, it's a pleasant reminder of why I started seeking help and the goals I had when we first started working together. Join the 3 million plus people who've taken charge of their mental health with an experienced BetterHelp therapist. Get your 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/visionaries. That's betterhelp.com/visionaries. Back to that point I was making earlier about this is a really difficult audience to monetize. Maybe they don't have the means, or maybe they just it's not a part of their consumer behavior. Obviously Pipeline's a business. You guys have to run a P&L and make back for your investors. How have you found, has it been difficult to convince that and ingrain that consumer behavior to these creators, or is there such a sizable amount of them that are just so desperate to learn something that having the guidance in your network is really useful? Because I think that's interesting, being able to get people onto a platform and monetize them in that way.
Yeah, I think for us, just from a business, we've learned a lot in the last 3 years. And I think one of the things that we've found is there's nothing existed like us before in one place. And because nothing has existed, you have to do a level of education around that beforehand. It's not just knowing that, hey, you go here and that you get in. So that's one area where we invest a lot in, is just, hey, there's a resource here. As part of why we're here today, right? It's hey, we're working on some stuff to help content creators. There's a resource there if you want it. Check it out. It's why we started our podcast as well. We're trying to put out free content to say, hey, if you want more of this, and that's just natural, right? There's an element of you needing to get the word out and let people know. The one thing, the one big lesson that we've learned is there's a big difference, and this is true on Twitch, of people that are motivated and are willing to put in the work, and there's the people that want to try something out and their intent is not super high. And I've noticed this where people will spend thousands of dollars on hardware, look at the microphone, look at the camera before they've even went live and tried out, is this something that I want to do? And then there's the person that's no, I want to become a student of the process and I want to learn how to do this. And those people typically, they'll be there's one guy, I got to call him out. He's not, I don't see him in the spaces, but I got to call him out. Stone, Chadwick. How awesome has it been to see his journey over the last few years of showing up to one of our first sessions, and literally he'd come with a suit, Jacob. He'd show up with a suit on, and his mindset around learning and wanting to learn is, he was I'm going to learn, I'm going to squeeze as much out of this as I possibly can. He is crushing it. He is, I don't know, he's got 400 CCV now or whatever, live viewers, constantly. And he
would join and keep asking questions too, of that's what's always really exciting, because I host a mentorship session, so people come back and keep coming back and asking questions along their process. We've seen hundreds and thousands at this point of creators that have joined, but to see that process, to see it is very cool. It's exciting. Yeah, definitely.
And it's just that archetype. That's I want to separate between the person who's I am committed to becoming a student of the process and learning, just like you are, Jacob, right? And your own journey as a journalist, you are so committed to becoming better with the craft. There's two mindsets. There's the person that's willing to do that, and there's the person that's I just want to try this out. And that's the vast majority of people on Twitch, is
the
people that will go live once and then they'll bounce, and they just keep recycling those people constantly.
Yeah, or I see a lot of people that just kind of are you know what, I'm going to stream if a bunch of people want to join, and thousands of people want to watch and blow me up, and then I'll become a full-time streamer after that. I'll allow that to happen. That sounds good. But a lot of times, what I actually see in practice of the creators that, to the example of all these guys that have become full time on Facebook that I've seen, obviously, I'm a little bit more tuned in on there and seeing people grow and everything. But a lot of them are like, they're very dedicated to what they're doing and continually creating content, uploading, and understanding the process, even if it's not necessarily through pipeline or whatever it is. But like, these are just people that are dedicated to up leveling themselves and what they're creating and finding ways to differentiate it and build an audience and create a narrative and story arc to keep people coming back through it. But it is very hard to, especially to this audience, to your point, even in gaming and everything, where it's like everybody wants everything for free in general, and there are good resources and things out there for it. But this was an interesting opportunity to try something different, and we didn't know if this was going to work when it first went out. It was very much like, let's see what happens. Let's see if everybody hates us after this, or if this is something that ends up being really interesting. And the amount of like outpouring love, even from the people that have been through the process of it, uh, has been very, very heartwarming in terms of like seeing the inspiration and like the backing. Because a lot of people, I could tell you firsthand too, a lot of people do not get backed in the process of wanting to do whatever they want to do, whether that's
Yeah.
content creation or, I remember going in and even I would play in these random lobbies and just like get reactions from people and just have fun in the games. And I remember in, my dorm room, my friends literally recorded me doing it, but they did it to make fun of me of how stupid I looked yelling at people at the TV and playing this game and getting all into the game and everything because I was such an idiot, right? And it's like it's a totally different perspective, but there's a group of people, and that's where like even the niche of my own audience and of what all of these creators and people are doing, you're creating for your own niche of whatever it is. It's very similar, I think, with Pipeline as well. And what we try and do is develop a really great experience and help as many people as we can that are interested in it. You know what I mean?
I feel like you just gave me some weird high school flashbacks. So I was a YouTube gaming content creator in like 8th and ninth grade, and I definitely had some classmates who would poke fun at that idea, even though I had like 1,000 subs, which is much better than a lot of people on YouTube on the platform, to be honest. That channel has now been very quickly nosedive because I'm embarrassed of the content that I created. But at the same time, it's definitely like it's the people who are just like making fun of your journey. It's like that early embarrassment.
Yeah.
Tough. I do want to ask about that from the different lens though, and then from like the mental health lens of you guys are both highly successful and were highly successful before you launched Pipeline in two different industries, right? Steven, like the pro player journey to being higher up at Facebook and working on this project. You could have gone and gotten a tech gig doing something else and probably making a whole lot of money doing it if you wanted to. And so on your front, you're like a very successful creator in your own right. I struggled now being independent, running a business with some anxiety around fear of failure, and especially being a public figure and having that past success under my belt. Do you guys face that? Do you face the anxiety of what happens if this doesn't work out in the end? And because of all those public eyeballs are on you?
Totally. But I think that's like, I don't know if I'm like addicted to that feeling or whatever, but like when I have that fear come up, I go like, why the hell am I doing this? Like, why do I choose to do this over something else? I think for me, I don't know if you recall the LCSPA or what was it? Is the ERPC? Sorry,
Yes, I do. Yeah,
which is a player association. So while I was competing, I really cared about helping junior players that were just starting out, and creating something that would help these new players like figure things out. And for me, like I've just been so fucking lucky to do what I've done over the last decade, and I feel extremely humbled by that. That the opportunity to go help 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 people do the same thing. Like if it's one of the guys in our community that's like a chef, and like he can then get out of this 14-hour a day gig that he's in and spend more time with his family and like make a living doing what he loves, fucking awesome. Like that is extremely rewarding. So am I shit scared? Totally. Like we have a bunch of we put a lot of time into this. That's the first thing. Like we put it years into this. We have some incredible people behind us, like massive creators, people that I really respect, that are backing us to build this company. And like it could all fail. It could go with tits up. Like we're in a crazy economy, right? Thankfully, we've accomplished a lot. We're doing a lot of good work, but there's always that existential thing of like, can you get this to the scale and the of where you want it to go and like the impact you want to have? That's always there.
Yeah, and I could tell you the same thing from my side as well. As like, I've definitely had many sleepless nights of like, is this like, I could be spending more time creating more YOLO videos that are going to get millions of views, or or doing more live streams or whatever that's going extremely well for me, and it's like, um, do I really want to be doing this at the end of the day? I've definitely had those thoughts, and it's like, well, does this work out? Does it not? Whatever. At the end of the day, for me though, it's like it's very similar with Steven. I think this is where we line up a lot. Is like it is very rewarding to help other people in a way that you know is very meaningful. I feel like at least meaningful for me in terms of some of the creators that I do get the chance to talk to week in and week out, and like, bro, I like some of the stories that people have told me. Even like Texas T is this guy who's got a whole family, and like he spent like 8 months even going through the playbook. He had all the tech equipment, everything he wanted to like start, but he just couldn't get over to the line and bring himself to actually do this. And like I talked to him for like 10 minutes and just drilled it into him as hard as I could. Like, you got to start doing something. And like now he's got, he's starting to build subscribers. He got partnered, or he's got the ability to get subscribers. That's been going super well. Like, he's just, every time he's like, "Thank you, man. It's been incredible," because it's like it helped to unlock something with what he's doing. And that for me is like a lot of the stories of like people that that for me is the most exciting thing. And I try and focus on that. And then I also think about too is like, even if this does, the economy kills us and we can't keep going, people just disagree, whatever it is, like it doesn't work out. It's like, are we pushing the industry in a good direction? And I feel like in so many ways, like we are trying to help the newer creator start doing this, become the middle class creator, whatever it is, to help grow to the biggest creator, whatever it is, like understand that and help that as much as we can. Obviously, we can't help absolutely everybody. We can't, like we're limited in ourselves. I'm still running my stuff, and what it is. But to me, it is worth the journey. And even if I push it in the right direction, it's something I'd like to be part of, and like to at least try and say that I put everything that I could in terms of obviously all the money we've invested into it, and the years, the months of putting the playbook together, the content, the research, looking at other creators, talking to other creators, like, I definitely feel like I've put a really good foot forward, as our whole team has, putting this together.
Yeah,
That
that's the one thing I would echo is like there's not just me and Stone. Like I
yeah,
want to give a shout out to the
Yeah.
15 people behind the scenes that are working on putting one foot in front of the other every single day to get us to where we are. Giving them a shout out as well. And I echo Stone. Like our industry does a great job of helping those at the top. We do a great job of that. We do a really shitty job of helping those folks on the way up, just because there's not a great incentive. And if we can push the industry forward to help, like to create a better incentive to help people on the way up, that'll be great.
even if like it means like, yeah, YouTube's like, hey, we got to compete with Pipeline, and we got to spend $100 million to get more creators, small creators blowing up or whatever it is. Like, all right, hey, that's a big win for me, man. Like that is what would be incredible. Like, I want more success for more people out there. That sounds good to me, man.
This is the last one for me, and we do have a few audience questions, and Sammy from my staff has a question as well, so I'll make sure to ask hers. But the last thing for me, you guys have both mentioned the economy there. I'm a founder. You two are founders. And there are founders definitely that I hear from that have listened to this podcast already in the past 2 weeks since it's launched. The fundraising economy is incredibly difficult, and I think everyone is looking around right now and figuring out how you make what you have work for the next 18 months, because whether it be anything from like lines of credit and loans getting much harder to obtain and interest rates being significantly higher, or just venture capital investors not wanting to take more risk, especially on like small to medium sized businesses like ours, right? The three people on this call, and rather than sort of the bigger things that they can see that are already kind of at scale or near IPO. How are you all evaluating that and kind of hunkering down?
First thing is we didn't start the company with venture backed. So we're very focused on like this has to be bigger than me and Stone, and we have to be able to build something that can sustain itself. Like if we really want to like move the industry forward, this has to be a business that can function beyond our support. Like we can bring people in. And so when we launched it years ago, we bootstrapped initially, and that was really important because we weren't doing the conventional, hey, like we're going to spend all this money and give away this for free, right? And like never have a business at the end of the day. It was important that we had a business model when we started out so that we could get to a point where this would be a sustainable business that, and that served us really well because we were able to attract certain investors last year that wanted to invest because we took that approach. The thing that I would say is, and this impact it does as well, is like we were taking a number of bets and we had to go, oh, we're going to not take those bets anymore right now. Just based on the current climate, we're not going to take those kind of bigger bets. Otherwise, we'll still take big bets, but not all of the ones that we were thinking of taking. And for us, it's just making sure that we can navigate this economy. A lot of, if you're venture backed, like typically you want to make sure you've got 18 to 24 months of runway. That might mean that, you know, I got to sell this microphone to pay someone. I'm just kidding. That's not the case. But like, I think you just got to change your psychology. You got to be like, this is the environment I'm now in. And what I was doing may no longer be serving me. And I got to adjust and prepare for the new reality. And I think that the challenge with this environment is none of us three have been in this environment before, right? So we don't fucking know what we're doing. We're just trying to make the best decision we possibly can. And I think it's just being really like, oh, this is where we are. We don't know how long this is going to last. Is it 2 years? Is it 2 months? Like nobody knows. And I think you just got to make sure that you are able to maintain doing what you're doing. I would argue for the next 12 to 18 months, like that at least is where you should be shooting for. And I think fundamentally people that build a business that is profitable and growing is a more sound business. It's a business that people want to invest in. I think I mean, I'm not the most savvy, like, you know, guy in finance or whatever. There's a lot of people more smart than me out there, but we've been in like a 10, 12 year run. It's just been a complete bull run. Like we're in a fundamentally different environment now than we have been. And I think it's just worth recalibrating on that. And I think things that may have been looked at in a certain way 2 years ago are just not going to be looked at the same way. And I think you gotta be building a meaningful business that's driving value for customers at the end of the day. And for us, that's creators. And I think for you, that's listeners or viewers, whatever it is for you, or sponsors. And you just want to make sure you're driving value. Value always wins at the end of the day. And value, or like, and whether value is entertainment or value is like saving time or whatever it is, it's just like make sure we're driving value.
That was a fantastic answer. Yeah.
I kind of find like even similarities in the from the content side of like, it's like an algorithm shift, you know? It's like, oh shoot, the streaming algorithm on YouTube stops working, so I got to figure out what's the next way to get the most out of the algorithm, to get the most views off of it or whatever. And it's the people that can adapt to those things that, like, that's who's going to be around in another couple of years.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about those valleys, Stone. Like the valleys in the last 10 years. How many times have you like went through the valley of like deep despair and then had to pick yourself up and get on like to the next?
There's been a lot. Maybe there's even like overlap with this mindset that can help people. That's been very helpful for me, which is like since the beginning, I've always said like if I can just get 50 views on something, that's more than anybody even saw in my classroom of kids that I did a presentation to back in the day, right? Like that was a win. And then that changed to like 50 likes on something, is like, because now people are actually interested in what I'm talking about, what I'm doing. And because my threshold is now like, for me now, that's very low. At the time it was like, how the hell am I going to get 50 people to watch anything? But like keeping that at where it was, where I still sometimes have internal like, oh, I want everything to hit 1,000 likes or 2,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 likes on it. As I was doing every stream for the last couple of years, it was like, holy shit, you're like, this is crazy. And then, you know, you stop hitting it. But like, I've got that internal measure of what I tell other people and where I'm set at. That's very low. And it's like, like literally, I am very happy to have even more than 50 people like something. It's like, that really is my bar of like, holy crap. So, you know, as long as I can maintain that and I don't that's where it's like I feel like a lot of it is the expectations versus the reality. And if you can keep that in line in yourself, then you don't get too depressed when you see all those numbers go down, because I've been through a lot of downs over many channels over all these years. But then, I also find other ways that are like, hey, okay, all the views are down, but the revenue's way up. Or, my Twitter doesn't grow very much, but I'm looking at my sub count on YouTube growing every day. I'm like constantly looking for what's the other thing that I can continue to drive or double down on to keep going off of. And it's like, okay, I found a win today that keeps me interested and happy of what I'm doing. And then, 2 years later, when the next big game comes out, I can catch that wave and deploy all the skills that I built up. Hell yeah, it's time to go gangbusters and just go big.
We're going to open the floor to audience questions. We'll start with, I think it's pronounced Braden David Sparrow, who had a question. I'm going to call you up, Braden, now in the space.
So my question was, for a beginning streamer, what's the best way to connect to other communities and streamers to start like getting your name through the door, such as like raids, playing with streamers, communities, and etc.
Yeah. I mean, that's always the dream, right? Is like, hey, dude, if I mean, I still feel like that to some degree. I'm like, damn, dude, if I start playing with Dr. Disrespect or whatever, boom, we're in there. But a lot of it for me has been like, how do I create my own community along the lines where, like, I ended up playing with Fuglit and Aculite and Tomographic, and like we became great buddies. Those guys went, like, when I first started playing with Tom, I think he had like 5,000 subscribers or something like that. Now the dude's 500,000 full time, right? Like, that's been a whole journey over a lot of years for it. A lot of that though comes from like, dude, I like the content you're putting out. You like the content I'm putting out. It's a good organic mesh. And I think a lot of that is just like, that's a lot of what it is over a lot of this. So whether that's even, it doesn't necessarily have to even be the stream you're doing or the video you're posting. It can also be the comments that you're leaving, or the community, the people that you're with. It's like, and a lot of that too, I found, is at events. You'll meet a lot of people and you can make a better connection with a lot of that. Like that's what's really helped me, because especially when I first started out, I really didn't like. There was a couple people that I engaged with. Noah J456 was a guy that like I had met because he was also a machinima and he was worried about something or whatever, and he asked me a question, and then we became friends. And then I didn't really play with him for 5 years later. But like he was somebody I was acquaintance with, and it kind of built up over time. A lot of it is more natural connections in terms of even a friend of a friend introducing you to somebody else, and do you really hit it off? That's the aspect. Like there is definitely an aspect of networking with content creation with anything, but there's also like the organic aspect where that's really the truth of it, is like, where is there an actual story arc or journey that people would be really interested in? I've had people that ended up getting on my World's Best Clip of the Week show multiple times, and it's like, dude, now people in the community know them. Now they're like, hey, will you play with them or whatever? And then there's this branch there that now makes sense with what it is. So to that extent, what I would say is actually get involved on the platform. For me, a lot of it was like, I consume a lot of content, and it was, rather than consuming all the content, it was actually like, okay, if I watch this, leave a comment on it. Like, what is my 2 cents on it? What is the different comment versus what everybody else is saying? What is the different content of what is in my head that makes it? Doesn't always work out. Like, I don't always have a unique take on whatever it is, but that's where you're trying to find those opportunities. And like, I think the best case of that, even talking about Doc, is like Z-Laner. Dr. Disrespect puts his post out, and I think he was like looking for somebody to play with because he got banned on Twitch, couldn't play with anybody on Twitch, and then boom, here you go. You got Z-Laner, who's got this skill set. He's got what he's got. He makes an actual video response to the post saying, this is why I'm the person for you to play with, sells it, delivers on the stream when he does it, and then boom. It's not that like
life changing
right?
from there.
Yeah, it was the audience loved him as well. Right. Like it was genuine content and love from that. And I don't think, I don't know if Doc necessarily was like, hey, I really like your content or whatever. Maybe it was, I don't know, but there was definitely a mesh there that then was a perfect fit for it and works out. And I've played with a lot of people that didn't work out with, a lot of people it did work out with. And I still like to play solos too all the time as well. So it's like, it depends on the person you find. And I would say be open to the opportunity, but also put yourself out there for it, if that makes sense. But great question, man.
Active engagement is by far, I think, the best way to do it. You, when you were telling that story, Son, about the Doc's viewer that got engaged that way, I thought of like JHB, the intern at 100 Thieves, who's like now on their staff, right? Like made that crazy pitch video about why they should hire him, and now he's like yes, he's an internal employee, but also like a content creator on his own, right? Like involved in their content, and they like had him a series at one point where he just embarrassed himself in front of a bunch of their network as well, which is really funny. I think that active engagement, I say that as two of the folks in this space that work on my team are people that I just randomly met through Twitter because I saw them like actively around and just like responding to each other and engaged in what we were doing, and now we all work together. So I think active engagement is just really important. On that note, I'm gonna let Sammy from my team ask her a question because she has one that is different from a lot of the discussion of the podcast.
Hi, sorry, Stone. I have a question specifically for Steven. I'm a very long time League fan, and like I've watched like Snoopeh play since like CLG EU, and I was a pretty big fan. And so I've seen you know your pro LoL career from start to finish, and I just want to know, what is your favorite memory from being a professional League player?
My favorite memory, first of all, thanks for your support over the last many iterations of my journey. It's fucking awesome to hear. The favorite memory I have from my pro LoL career, there's a couple of things that are really, really cool, but one of them really has to be, we were in Sweden at a DreamHack in Sweden, and we were kind of on the come up as a team. We had a legendary game against Moscow 5 during that tournament, but it was actually after the event wrapped. We stayed behind to like see the fans that were there that day, and we were there for 3.5 hours after already playing for the entire day. We had so many fans in Sweden that were there for 3.5 hours just signing, and it was just like we were exhausted but so fucking happy to be there and seeing everyone that we were like just there till they closed the doors. Like the people were kicking us out, and it was just one of the most wholesome things. And there's like loads of other moments that like were amazing, but that just stands out to me as just like the amount of overwhelming support we had from the fans, and getting to spend that time with them was incredible.
We're going to end off with a question from Prime, who's also on my team, because actually, Stone, you mentioned earlier when we were talking about if the business doesn't work out, you had mentioned in that answer that if YouTube came in and decided they were just going to copy your business model and throw nebulous amounts of capital behind it to achieve that goal. Prime's question is along that line, so I'll let him ask it.
Hey guys, so question's pretty simple. What do you guys think of the Ninja masterclass on like how to become a big streamer? Do you think that kind of format, that mass format of general knowledge works, or do you think that to actually find success kind of at the scale that masterclass is targeting, do you think it needs to be more personalized?
It's a great question. Obviously, it's very topical. This happened like a couple of days ago, right? Or maybe a week ago or so, that it kind of blew up and a bunch of YouTube stuff. So the question was like, do I think a masterclass like that from Ninja is helpful? I think it is to a certain person. And I think it really depends. Like I haven't went through all the content, so I don't want to speak too much to like all of the content that's in there, the support that you get. But I think to a certain person who's like maybe never heard of this, never like been on Twitch, never been on YouTube, and like they want to learn more, and they just see Ninja at Walmart, whatever it is, and like they want to see what his take is on streaming or content creation, I'm sure it could be extremely valuable to get his insight or his perspective and like open their eyes to a world that they didn't know a lot about. I'm sure that is great. I do think it is important though, if you are invested in like, it depends what your goals are, right? Like if you really want to build this into something, you probably need to do more work. And then you also maybe need a better container where you've got, an active community, you're able to show up and ask questions, like just a different format. So I think it could be helpful to some people. I think it depends who that person is, and it depends on your goals. This is a little bit of a PC answer because it's like weird for me to answer this question, right? Because we have an education like platform for streamers, so it's weird. And we seen that video and we're like, oh shit, is this bad for us? Is this good for us? And I sat with that and I was like we really put a lot of work in every single week. We have a team of people that are like working on this every single week and we're showing every single week. I feel like it really, the container matters to help someone be successful. And if it's just a single video and you put it out, it might not be as helpful. I don't know, Stone. What do you, we haven't talked about this, so like it's a good question.
Yeah, I think too, like I do think there is, to your point, like I do think there is value that people are going to get from it. I don't think necessarily the absolute masses, right? Like Ninja is an extremely, extremely successful content creator. Even if you don't like him or his content or whatever, like the aspect that he took to approach Fortnite and the way that he used Instagram to leverage up his audience and grow it. And again, I don't know the specifics of his masterclass per se or what he created for it, but like he is definitely a dude that I respect and what he has done and what he has accomplished. Like no question about it. I bought his other book, that like How to Be a Good Gamer too. I don't think it necessarily made me a great other gamer, but like I've got a lot of respect for the guy and what he is at the forefront of trying to head. Like it's nerve wracking doing anything different. And that's definitely an extreme level of it. But I do think there is another aspect. It's just like where, for some people, just watching YouTube videos is going to be all they need. For some people, a podcast and having regular check-ins is going to be even better. For some people, having, joining a class every week and like talking with other creators and asking somebody who's been at it for more years, that's going to be another great aspect that also a lot of other people are going to be like, this is a waste of time. I watched my YouTube video and I'm just going to go do it or whatever. Like there's so many different aspects to it, but that's where I see so many niches being helpful to people. And like to your question, then I do think there is a more robust approach from somebody that you know and trust, where like people are going to trust what Ninja says more so than somebody who's never done it and they're just trying to piecemeal information from other people and try and figure it out in the first place, right? To where that's where I definitely see lessons from. It's the same thing with Mr. Beast. Like anytime Mr. Beast is on a podcast or whatever, I try and listen to all of it because there's a ton of great information that you could pick up. Even if you don't apply all of the information that you learn from what it is, like there's still a lot of things that you could take away. Or if you think critically about how he approached something, you could take it into your own series, to the point of what I was even talking about with how I started a lot of my series that ended up blowing up with the, innovating off it.
Yeah, I don't have a soundbite for it. Like I'm not gonna dunk on Ninja. Like he's done fucking incredible, and like it's for a certain group of people, and like that's who masterclass, they market to. So I think that is what it is.
Yeah, I hear you. I took some years ago, maybe 4 years ago or 5 years ago, bought the Bob Woodward masterclass and like went through it fully, and I was just like, I feel like it's the to the point, Stone, you were talking about the people that just stream once and then they just like bounce off. I feel like that's who that's catered to. At least when I took the Woodward one, was like, oh, nice. This like tells you like I took this whole thing and I decided, okay, I want to do journalism or I don't. Like now I've got the little taste in my mouth and now I just want to walk away.
But I think that even that decision of like, oh, this is for me or this is not for me, like even if you help someone make that decision, I think that's like a powerful thing, because they could end up saving years of their time, or like, with this indecision or thinking about it.
It could also be the seed that's like, okay, now I'm interested, or now it's like, oh, I didn't get enough from this, or I want more of whatever it is, like to continue down. Like I still think there's a lot of value in that as well. And like there's so many people that have different paths. Like I even saw a video of this guy that ended up becoming incredibly successful, and like, or I guess I don't know the details, but he was basically attributing a lot of his success to Ty Lopez, the guy who did like the Ferrari ad, where like, he sat there and watched the whole ad for 3 hours or whatever, and he became super inspired off of it, and that was his jumping off point. And he said like he credited a lot of what he was doing to that ad that like, became a giant internet meme and everything off of it. But that was like the first stepping stone for him for like realizing like, hey, I could take control a little bit more of my life and actually learn some more things. And then, he did a whole bunch of other things after that led to it. But I don't know. I usually, it's the same extent of like, I don't know where people's content's going to go either, where it's like, I look at something and I'm like, how is this ever going to be popular? Like, when PewDiePie was first blowing up, like he hit like 100K subs or whatever. I was like, I don't get it. I just, it's not the content for me per se of, the, whatever it was, the Minecraft and the face cam and the scary stuff and reacting to it or whatever. But then, it ends up blowing up, or even Mr. Beast, like some of the over top, whatever crazy things. Like, I don't really get it. But then a lot of times I try to even check myself and be like, well, there's still stuff that's working there. So what could I pull away from this of like what's working, and maybe try and, figure out what is it? Like sometimes there's an opportunity with that.
What's your take, Jacob? I mean, I want to flip the. What's your take on it? You've been watching it.
I haven't watched the Ninja Masterclass actually. Yeah, I don't know. I'm of the opinion, for whatever reason, the space just crashed. Anyway, I'm of the opinion that there's a lot of commercial opportunity for a lot of creators, especially those top heavy people. I think some of that will be good and some of that will not be. And so having not actually seen through the masterclass fully myself at this point, other than like the stuff they've put out promotionally, yeah, that to me is it's really interesting. I would be curious kind of the quality of the content, so I want to go back and watch it. I think we're gonna call it there. Thank you guys both for this interview. I'm really looking forward to sharing this with everybody. If you're unfamiliar with Visionaries and want to listen to more of this content, we've recently had Atrioc and Maya Higa on to talk about being creator and their perspective on it as well. You can find those across YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, other platforms. Thank you again, Stone and Steven. And yeah, I'm sure we'll have you guys back eventually here.
Awesome, man. Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Thanks for having us on.
Thank y'all.